Hello, my name's Leah Taylor. I'm a mesothelioma nurse specialist and team leader at Mesothelioma UK. We've been bringing you a series of interviews to give you a bit of an insight into the mesothelioma community, and I'm thrilled today to be able to bring you some insight from the mesothelioma community across the water in America, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Heather von St. James. Heather, I was lucky enough to meet 6 years ago for the first time, and met again since on a wonderful visit to Washington DC for the mesothelioma symposium. So welcome, Heather. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's really lovely to see you.
I am so thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I know there's quite a number probably of our UK community who already know who you are and probably follow you. But I wonder, for those who don't know so much about you, Heather, whether you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how mesothelioma has affected you.
Sure. I am one of the young patients. I was just 35 years old when I was diagnosed. I was a new mom. I had a 3.5-month-old baby. And after I had Lily, I just had never recovered from the C-section. I just kept getting sicker and sicker, and I was short of breath, and I was getting paler. I was ghost white and just no energy. And my doctor thought I had a heart virus that affects women postpartum. So he ordered a chest x-ray to see if I had an enlarged heart. Instead, what he found was fluid around my left lung. So he sent me to go get a thoracentesis done, the fluid drained. And that doctor was very concerned about the color of the fluid and the amount. So he immediately sent me off for a CT scan, and to make a 3-week long story short, I was diagnosed with malignant pleural mesothelioma on November 21st, 2005. Excuse me, I get my years mixed up. So 2005, just 3.5 months old, with a baby at home that's 3.5 months old, and not knowing what to do. And they're telling me that I had 15 months to live. And my husband and I are sitting in this room, and I said, no, I've got a new baby. I need to raise her. That's what else do you have for me? And he's like, well, if you do chemo and radiation, which is, there's a new drug that's showing some promise, you might get 5 years. And my husband's shaking his head going, no, it's not good enough. And he says, or you can go have this surgery. It's really invasive, but it's going to give you your best bet at survival. And if you're lucky, really lucky, you'll get 10 years. And at that point, what we had hoped, if we could even get 5 years, that treatments would have been developed enough that we could get some more years out of it. So we just wanted to stay ahead of it as much as possible. So without batting an eye, my husband says, get us to Boston. And we ended up flying to Boston, Massachusetts, from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we flew halfway across the country to meet this doctor, Dr. David Sugarbaker, the late Dr. David Sugarbaker. And I met him in the hallway, and basically he looked at me and he's like, you're my patient. I said, yes, I am. He's like, I'm going to save your life. And for the first time, I had hope in like 3 weeks. And it was very surreal to be there with all these, mesothelioma patients who look so sick. And here I was, the prime of my life. I'm 35 years old. I'm a new mom. Well, I did not belong there, and I fought it, and I was mad, and I was angry. And thank God for the wonderful support there, because they calmed me down, and they're like, you're in the best place you can be. We're going to do everything we can for you. And here I am 15 years later. February 2nd is my 15-year surgery anniversary. So I'm still alive, I'm still here, and I have dedicated my life to advocacy and awareness for mesothelioma. So it worked.
Absolutely. It's so amazing, Heather. And I guess that those sort of initial feelings and thoughts about when you get that diagnosis, there'll be some people watching this who are really newly diagnosed with mesothelioma and feeling that intense shock and anger and pain. And I guess that probably doesn't leave you ever, that remembering that.
Yeah, it's something that it changes you on a foundational level. I'll never forget hearing the words. I knew I had cancer. I didn't know what kind. And so when he told us mesothelioma, and I looked at my husband and he says, oh, that's bad. I'm like, what in the world is this? And then the doctor asked me about asbestos. And that's when the pieces started falling together. So, and it turns out that I was exposed to asbestos as a child. My father worked with it in construction. He did construction and demolition. And most of what my dad did was drywall work. Well, before 1978, all drywall compound contained asbestos. And he would mix it and he would sand it and he would come home covered in dust. And I would wear this coat of his and go out and do my chores so I wouldn't get my coat dirty. And they're thinking, pretty positive that that's where the dust came from, was, a result of his job. So, it's they're doing nothing more than providing for the family. And that's what's so tragic about this. My dad was going to work to provide a living, to provide a roof over our head and food on our table. And I ended up sick 30 years later, and he was devastated. And, he has since then passed away. He passed away 7 years ago from kidney cancer that we think was probably caused by the asbestos as well. Because there's no history of kidney cancer anywhere in our family. We're the only two that have ever had cancer in our family.
Yeah.
So, we're pretty sure that the asbestos has caused both of it. But he was devastated. And, I released it. It's like, Dad, it's not your fault. You were just providing for us. So, you're dealing with that whole aspect of it, the guilt from your parent or your spouse.
Yeah.
And then, the disease, dealing with it for the, myself. And I think that's part of the reason that I vowed to make such a difference is, for my dad more than anybody. So he could see that I was going to be okay.
You've certainly made a difference, Heather, and continue to do so. And just for the viewers, just to clarify, the treatment that you've had rather a lot of treatment as part of that whole experience. So you had chemotherapy, surgery, and radiotherapy.
Yep.
And also, was there heated chemotherapy during the operation? Yep. So an awful lot of treatment.
So,
I guess it's a procedure that's largely not done now in the UK, as you know, to take the lung and the lining of the lung as well. And I believe there's a bit of a change in practice in the US on that as well. I did watch, there's a fantastic episode of the Meso TV that addresses that, isn't there, and talks about your experience. And I guess I just, wondered, how has that surgery left you? What's the lasting effect for you, physically and psychologically, from having that extensive treatment?
Yeah. So I had my entire left lung removed. So, and they don't really do that a lot anymore. Only in very special cases. But 15 years ago, it was kind of the pioneering thing, and I was young and healthy otherwise. So it was like, let's go big or go home. Let's just take care of this. So the surgery has left me, I cannot work anymore. I don't work outside my home. I used to be a hairdresser, which I know that's probably shocking and looking at me, but I used to do hair, and I owned a salon, and I had to sell my salon and quit work. And that was hard because I can't stand for long periods of time anymore. And as a result of the radiation, I have debilitating nerve issues on the left side of my body because they radiated such a large portion, basically my entire left quadrant, the entire left portion of my chest. And it just destroyed a lot of nerve endings. So my left arm is completely numb. I have a paralyzed vocal cord that thankfully I've had a surgical procedure to fix, and it's stuck, it's worked. I didn't have a voice for almost 8 months, 2 years ago. I was raspy and whispery, and that was terrible for someone like me who likes to talk. So it's like these weird things keep creeping up down the road, but I'm here. It's 15 years later, and so I take it all with a grain of salt. There's days when I allow myself to get angry about it. Like, I wish my hand worked. Like, I've cut myself, when I'm cooking or I'm trying to do gardening and I can't do it, and I get angry, and it's like, wait, you're alive, you're here to do it, you're alive to have this emotion, so just let it wash over me, and then I'm usually okay. Yeah. So, and I just, I try to stay on that side of things, on the very grateful side of things, but I will admit, I allow myself the anger, and I think that's healthy, because to push it away, it just grows up bigger. And so I just try to accept it as what it is, and be grateful that I'm here. So.
Yeah, I think, you know, you've always struck me as being a very positive person, but there's got to be another side to that, hasn't there? That you have those, that you allow yourself
Oh,
down days, and
oh,
you know, that you can have those angry days and get,
absolutely.
yeah,
You know, and it's really hard when you do the advocacy like I do, and you get to know so many people through the years. You lose a lot of people. I mean, anybody knows when you're dealing with mesothelioma, you deal with intense loss as you experience. You get to know people, and within 18 months, they're gone. And I lost two very, very dear friends this last year, and it's been hard, especially now with COVID, um, and the pandemic, not being able to pay last respects or go to the funerals, or they're not even able to have a funeral right now. And so that's been really difficult to deal with.
yeah,
So kind of pouring into the, you know, how that the mental health thing deals with survivorship. There's survivor guilt that follows a lot of us around. And there's going to be a Meso TV episode actually on survivor's guilt,
yeah,
where we talk about how to deal with that. And it was really helpful to help understand a lot of the emotions that I have. So yeah, it's the tampering the gratefulness of being alive and being here to do what I do, along with the heartbreak and the anger and the sadness. And I think the secret is to allow yourself to feel all these emotions, but don't live in the anger and don't live in the despair, because that's just bad news. You know, it's like deal with it, let it out, and then get back to your grateful place. And that's where I try to live.
yeah. And I think what the when I was lucky enough to come to Washington for the second time to the symposium, and um, just for those people who are watching, the symposium is such an amazing event that brings together people with mesothelioma, their patient, their families and carers, and
Mm-hmm.
then the very best doctors, nurses, scientists involved in mesothelioma
Yes.
research in the UK, in the US, and brings them together in one place, mingling
Mm-hmm.
over
Yep.
breakfast and lunch, and such an amazing place to be. And I remember being part of a support group, a breakout session, which was a support group, and just being absolutely blown away by how much people were willing to share about their experiences and help one another. Because I guess
Yeah.
one of the things for yourselves, which we can't really understand here, is the miles you need to travel potentially to access your healthcare. And I was just this morning, I was plotting that Boston, Minnesota to Boston, and just seeing the actual distance that you traveled to have
Yeah.
surgery, and coming from a, you know, living in a country where we have one unified health system, you know, we feel dreadful if we have to refer a patient outside of our own region, and that might be a few hundred miles. But
Mm-hmm.
for yourselves, that's thousands of miles, and to some extent, people might have to find their own specialists. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's the hard thing, is that there's, you know, first of all, you deal with insurance over here. If you don't have insurance, you're probably going to die, which is horrible. Which is why I'm a big advocate for single payer healthcare, much like you have. Not to get political, but um, and yeah, traveling. If you live in a rural area here, the United States is huge. You know, I have to drive 6 hours just to get to my mom's house 600 miles, or no, 10 hours to get to my mom's house 600 miles away. And in order to get to Boston, where I went for the first, you know, many years of my treatment, was a 2.5, 3 hour flight. But now I go to Houston, and because my doctor had moved and started a new program in Houston. And since he passed, I now see his predecessor down there, but I haven't been able to go since COVID. So, yeah, we travel great distances. Most people go to the areas of specialty. They go to Houston, Texas, or New York, or Pennsylvania, or Washington, D.C.
Mm.
There's a few places, you know, throughout that dabble in mesothelioma, but in order to see the people that are really good and are going to save your life, you got to go to these bigger specialty areas, and it's a big undertaking. And that's why I love the Meso Foundation so much, is because they do have travel grants
Mm.
that can assist people in their travels. And I actually have a travel grant, raise money for a travel grant through the Meso Foundation to help patients, because it was such an important part of my treatment. And it saved my life, being able to travel.
Yeah. It,
So
it just adds an extra burden, doesn't it? A huge
yeah, it
burden onto that already treatment if you're traveling and
Yep.
you're well, you've got
Yep.
symptoms.
Yep.
Just,
And it's not doable for everybody.
yeah,
And we understand that as well. And that's what is so great about like your organization, where you're able to talk to people throughout the country. And the Miso Foundation, as much as say Mary is kind of our common go-to person. She's our angel, and she helps so many people throughout the country find the help they need and be able to ask their doctors where they're at.
yeah,
So yeah, so there are programs, but you have to be willing to travel, and it's a long time. If you live in California and you have to travel to DC, that's a whole day travel.
yeah,
And when you
absolutely.
feel like crud, oof, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and you're right. I think the Meso Foundation and Mesothelioma UK are kind of, feel like sister organisations, if you like. That we try and signpost people to the best
mhm.
to the best care. So, in terms of your work as an advocate, Heather, and your work with the foundation, can you tell us a bit more about that? Because I know you are quite involved with the Meso Foundation, aren't you?
Yes. So I found the Mista Foundation through a client of mine who did a donation when she found out I was sick. And so I've learned about it a long time ago. And then a couple of gals who I got to know their mom went to the symposium back in 2000. I want to say it was 2007 or 2008. And so that was like my first foray into it. And I was blown away because it's like, oh, there's so many more people like me. And I didn't feel so isolated. So to find a community for one was amazing. And then I just got more and more involved as time went on. And last year, Mary and I had been talking about how to involve the community more. And so we developed with my friend Katie Jameson, who's also a Minnesota girl, we developed the community advisory board. So my friend Katie Jameson and I, she's a peritoneal patient, are co-chairs of this community advisory board. And we brought on members of the community to help spread the word about the foundation, for one, because until there's awareness, nobody knows. And unless you talk about it, nobody's going to understand. And when somebody hears mesothelioma, it's going to cue up a name in their mind of somebody that they remember talking about it. And hopefully we can get more people into the foundation that way. Working with our centers of excellence and our doctors to let them know that the MESA Foundation is a viable solution to help the patients. So getting the communication between doctors and patients going about it, and just upping fundraising and awareness about the foundation, because it's a very small foundation. And in the US there's thousands and thousands upon thousands of nonprofits. There's
Yeah.
the American Cancer Society and all that, but the Meso Foundation is the only one specifically dedicated to mesothelioma only. And Mary knows more than anybody. I mean, she knows more than doctors. That woman is like walking encyclopedia. So I'm very fortunate to know her so well and have her as such a dear friend and colleague.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the Miso Foundation is just such a wonderful organization, and we love partnering with Miso UK because it is nice to have that. It's a common disease all over the world. So
Absolutely.
to be able to talk, amongst all of us is really valuable.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's for a rare disease, it's actually having that community together is so important, isn't it? That international community, and I think that's what a lot of us are missing massively. Are missing the ability to do that. I was watching one of the Meso TV episodes, and really, so pleased to see our own Liam Bradley on there as
Yeah.
well, and just sharing those experiences, because it is that how mesothelioma affects you, those common themes, the symptoms, how you feel
Yep.
about the disease itself, all of those things that you were talking about in terms of your dad. And it doesn't matter where you live and what treatment you have, and some of those things are really core to you all, aren't they? So it was lovely to see Liam on there as well, and great
Yeah.
to share all that experience. And if I can ask you, Heather, in terms of COVID, I guess in some ways you're probably already ahead of the game because of the geography of America. So we have support groups here that we physically meet as much as possible, because the UK is much smaller. We can
Yeah.
nicely bring people together, hopefully in our regions. And obviously because of COVID, we've not been able to do that since last March. So we took the step, a lot of us in our support groups, to move those online and use things like Zoom which has taken a bit of getting used to. But I guess in some ways, probably the support within the US has had to be like that from the very start because of your geography. Is that right?
Yeah, we had the symposium, every other year, or the little smaller ones, the regionals, where we'd get together once a year, and those were so valuable. And then when COVID came along, we had to cancel the big symposium, which was heartbreaking. And that's when we were going to launch our community advisory board and all meet together for the first time and have this big party. And yeah, so it kind of was a fizzle. And so we moved it online. The Meso Foundation had already had phone-in support groups, which were a good thing. They were like every Monday night for a different group. And then they did move those to Zoom, which is nice. So you can actually see the people. Thank God for technology, because it really has been a literal lifesaver for many of us, to have the communication in the community. And so our advisory board meets once a month, and we do it via Zoom. And we're starting to do socials now, just like a social hour on a Sunday afternoon. We should invite you guys. It'd be fun to have the UK people on.
Oh, that would be good.
And yeah, and it'd be fun for the US people too to see that this is a worldwide disease. It doesn't just affect people in the US. And I think we forget that, that we're a global community. So yeah, the online portion is really important. And I think COVID really brought that into reality out of necessity. We had to band together more. Once a year doesn't cut it, It's like we really need to talk to one another. I talk to people all the time, but having the greater community is really good. So yeah, I'm very thankful for the Zoom and the WebExes and all this stuff that we can get together and have a chat.
It would have been a very different, if this had happened 10 years ago, say, it would have been so much different, wouldn't it? We're
so different
off from people now, but really, it would have been much worse, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
What are you hearing from people who are diagnosed with mesothelioma at this time, Heather? What's the, what are they experiencing? Because I guess, getting a diagnosis of mesothelioma is, at any point is so hard. But then to have that, I know for, the extra complexities it brings at the moment for patients accessing healthcare and, wanting to come to hospital, that fear.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from people that you're talking to?
Some of them, the hospitals have been really, really good about, COVID practices. The hardest thing is the isolation, and not being able to be with the loved one, and because they only let one person in. So it's the isolation that is the hardest part, and the not being able to be with your loved one. But as far as I know, people are still traveling, not as much as they used to. But you gotta jump on this when you can, and you have to get in front of it. And that's what's so scary. So I don't think there's not as many people going to the doctor right now. So I think diagnoses are not happening as timely as they should. And that's a big worry. And that's with like any type of illness right now. People are foregoing seeing the doctor because they don't want to get COVID. And that's a terrifying, aspect of this disease, or of the pandemic. So that's what I'm hearing here, is just the isolation and not being able to be with your loved ones when they're getting treatment and stuff is really hard on people.
Yeah, and I think that's probably shared here as well. And like you, we've seen referrals go way down for all types of cancers, and that is a real worry for those people in accessing treatment, and for the knock-on effect that it's going to have for some years to come as well. Is really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm hoping the vaccine proves to be as effective, and that we can get back to some semblance of a normal life soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever the new normal is, it's like after cancer. So cancer prepared me well for this, because I had to be pretty isolated during my treatment because I was so sick. So, and I wore a mask all the time. So I just kind of joke. I'm like, cancer prepared me well for COVID. So look at it as you may.
And one of the things I remember, really fondly, and I know my Meso UK colleagues who were there as well do, when we came to Washington, was about a day on the Hill, which was a really amazing experience, going and, you know, that, and that's part of what you do as well, isn't it? Going and talking to your senators. And so what sort of things do you go and when you campaign and try and raise awareness and of mesothelioma, what sort of things would you talk to them about?
Mainly the piece of we're looking for a mesothelioma registry bill, getting that going, and just funding for mesothelioma. Funding for mesothelioma has been cut so many times, and I've also participated in a congressional medical review panel through the government, and that helps align monies to fund rare cancers. So I fight for funding for mesothelioma because it's such a rare cancer and it does not get its fair share. And so it's very important to me that mesothelioma is represented in this Department of Defense funding line to make sure we have the money to provide for research. And it's through these grants that a lot of the research that is happening right now has come to fruition, and that the Meso Foundation has been able to fund as well. So it's vital. It's absolutely vital. So that's the main thing that I go to DC and fight for, is funding.
It's so important to keep those on the agenda at the moment, isn't it? When so much else is being ploughed into COVID and,
Yep.
you know, economic recovery and all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
People when they're not working, and, you know, it's so important that we do keep those messages going, that keep that on the agenda, that, you know, these conditions, mesothelioma, are still out there despite COVID. And absolutely.
Yep. Rare cancer doesn't go away.
Doesn't go away.
They don't go away. So.
And I saw on the when I've been researching you, Heather, over the last sort of week or so, and you know, finding out what you've been up to, I saw that you'd been awarded last year. I think, if I'm right, the award ceremonies would normally take place during a symposium. That you were given the Bruce Vento Hope Award. And I just want to, having attended award ceremony, I just wanted to, you know, hear what that sort of award means to you.
So what's really great is Bruce Vento is a Minnesota congressman who died of mesothelioma. That's not great, but he's from Minnesota and I live in Minnesota. So to be presented with the Bruce Vento Award was like the hometown hero guy, you know, and his widow, Sue Vento, is a dear friend of mine, and she was the one who presented virtually the award. So just that aspect right there, having it have such the personal connection, meant the world to me. But being recognized for all the work that I've done for the last 14 years is huge, because I have been busting my butt and working really hard for this you know, not just for the organization, but for just greater awareness. I just really have a passion about making sure that people know there's hope, and that there's treatments out there that are working and giving people longer life, and that it's important to make your voice known and share your story. And so to have the recognition and have that Spirit of Hope Award was just like wonderful. It was a dream come true. Something I've really been coveting for a long time, I won't lie. Ever since my first symposium, like, I gotta get that guy someday. So it was the realization of a dream, and very honored to get it.
Sure,
so even if it was virtual, I still have my little award, and I look at it every day, and
very well. I saw how
it just makes me
how tightly you were clutching that award. It just makes me realize that all the work I'm doing is the right thing. And I think, you know, going back to the start of the interview when you said, you know, you had to give up work. Actually, you didn't give up work at all. You just you do different work, and you probably work harder than what you ever have.
Yeah, it's more emotional, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but it's worth it. It's worth every minute. I love it, and I love the people I've met, and my life is so much richer for meeting. I would have never met people all over the world, and you know, otherwise. And so we joke and say mesothelioma is the worst way to meet the best people. And it absolutely, you know, I live that. It's just, the community is like unlike any other, and so caring and so loving, and just proud to be a part of it and represent it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's such a good way of putting it. Such a good way. And I guess we'll probably run a little bit out of time, but I wanted to ask you about Lung Leaving Day.
Oh,
I know that that's looming, isn't it?
yes, yes. So we call the day that I lost my lung leaving day, because it's the day my lung left. And we celebrate it every year on the first Saturday in February. How the tradition started was my husband and my sister were talking about how to commemorate the day my lung left. And my sister came up with the name. And then they were like, oh, you should do fire walking to walk on your fears. And we're like, we live in Minnesota, no way. And my husband's like, we should do like the Greeks do and break plates against a wall. And out of that was born writing your fears on the plate and smashing plates into a bonfire. So the first anniversary, February 2nd, 2007 would have been the first year after my surgery. My husband comes home with 2 plates and 2 Sharpies. And it's 17 below. And he goes out and he gets his fire started. I don't know how he did it, but it's 17 below in Minnesota. And we sat down and we wrote our fears on these plates and we smashed them in the fire. And we're like, oh, that felt so good. And so we decided to make it a party the next year. And it's grown year after year after year. And now we use it as a fundraiser for the Mesothelioma Foundation. And we have raised over, let's see, my travel grant is up to 16,000 right now, but throughout the years we've donated to other organizations too. And so it's over $40,000 total that we've raised for different organizations, but now everything is concentrated towards the Meso Foundation. So my goal is to get it over 20,000 this year. So I have $4,000 or so to raise. So I'm having, a fundraiser. I'm selling t-shirts and sweatshirts. Liam actually ordered one. So I've gone international. So you can look for a lung leaving day hoodie over in England now.
Well, I did look and I did wonder whether you would post them out.
So yeah, so it's just a fundraiser for the Mesothelioma Foundation. Or if you guys want to do that, donate to the Meso UK in my name. That would be great. Keep the money local and keep you guys going over there. So, if you want to celebrate Lung Leaving Day in the UK on February 6th with us, donate some money to the Meso UK. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you gonna live stream that on Facebook?
Yes, it'll be through my Facebook page. We're going to be live streaming that, and also my Instagram, which is Heather VSJ. I'll be live streaming there, and we might do like a WebEx, but that's up to my husband. He's the techie guy. I just do the Facebook and the Instagram. Yeah. So it'll be live streaming, so you can either friend me or just follow my page and join us that way. So it'll be February 6th at 7 p.m. So it'll be really bright and early in the morning there. Yeah. And so you can watch the recording during the afternoon. Yeah, we're going to live stream it. So yeah, it has to be virtual this year. We don't want to risk anybody getting sick. So especially me. So we're just going to be 3 of us, my husband, my daughter, and me.
Yeah, fantastic. So, I hope that goes well.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
I was going to close by asking, actually, Heather, which you have given some pointers, how people can follow you. If and I do know we already have some of our Meso community who follow you already, but for others who might want to follow you and follow what you're doing and what you're involved in, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can Google my name, Heather Von St. James, Heather VSJ. I'm Heather VSJ on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. So you can follow me in all those places. And even on TikTok, but I don't do much there because I'm too old, but I do a little bit. So you can Google me and find me. The easiest way.
I'm too old. That's how I feel about TikTok as well.
I can't dance. So I just do funny dog things and, goofy cancer videos. So
wonderful. Thanks so much for talking to me today, Heather. It's been absolutely fabulous.
It's my honor.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I love it. I thank you so much. So good.
You stay well, and hope Lung Leaving Day goes very well. I shall look out for it.
Thank you.